In Watermelon Sugar by Richard Brautigan. This chapter is called Vegetables. Pauline's shack was about a mile from iDeath. She doesn't spend much time there. It's beyond the town. There are about 375 of us here in Watermelon Sugar. A lot of people live in the town, but some live in shacks at other places, and there are, of course, we who live at iDeath. There were just a few lights on in the town other than the street lamps. Doc Edwards's light was on. He always has a lot of trouble sleeping at night. The school teacher's light was on too. He was probably working on a lesson for the children. We stopped on the bridge across the river. There were pale green lanterns on the bridge. They were in the shape of human shadows. Pauline and I kissed. Her mouth was moist and cool, perhaps because of the night. I heard a trout jump in the river, a late jumper. The trout made a narrow door-like splash. There was a statue nearby. The statue was of a gigantic bean. That's right, a bean. Somebody a long time ago liked vegetables, and there are 20 or 30 statues of vegetables scattered here and there in Watermelon Sugar. There's the statue of an artichoke near the shingle factory, and a 10-foot carrot near the trout hatchery at iDeath, and a head of lettuce near the school, and a bunch of onions near the entrance to the Forgotten Works. And there are other vegetable statues near people's shacks, and a rutabaga by the ballpark. A little ways from my shack, there is a statue of a potato. I don't particularly care for it, but a long time ago somebody loved vegetables. I once asked Charlie if he knew who it was, but he said he didn't have the slightest idea. Must have really liked vegetables, though, Charlie said. Yeah, I'd said. There's the statue of a potato right near my shack. We continued up the road to Pauline's place. We passed by the Watermelon Works. It was silent in the dark. Tomorrow morning it would be filled with light and activity. We could see the aqueduct. It was a long, long shadow now. We came to another bridge across a river. There were the usual lanterns on the bridge and statues in the river. There were a dozen or so pale lights coming up from the bottom of the river. They were tombs. We stopped. The tombs look nice tonight, Pauline said. Certainly do, I said. There are mostly children here, aren't there? Yes, I said. They're really beautiful tombs, Pauline said. Moths fluttered above the light that came out of the river from the tombs below. There were 5 or 6 moths fluttering over each tomb. Suddenly a big trout jumped out of the water above a tomb and got one of the moths. The other moths scattered and then came back again, and the same trout jumped again and got another moth. He was a smart old trout. The trout did not jump any more, and the moths fluttered peacefully above the light coming from the tombs. Margaret again. How's Margaret taking all this? Pauline said. I don't know, I said. Is she hurt or mad or what? Do you know how she feels? Pauline said. Has she talked to you about it since you told her? She hasn't talked to me at all. I saw her yesterday near the Watermelon Works. I said hello, but she walked past me without saying anything. She seemed terribly upset. I don't know how she feels, I said. I thought she'd be at iDeath tonight, but she wasn't there, Pauline said. I don't know why I thought she'd be there. I just had a feeling, but I was wrong. Have you seen her? No, I said. I wonder where she's staying, Pauline said. I think she's staying with her brother. I feel bad about this. Margaret and I were such good friends. All the years we've spent together at iDeath, Pauline said, we were almost like sisters. I'm sorry that things had to work out this way, but there's nothing we could do about it. The heart is something else. Nobody knows what's going to happen, I said. You're right, Pauline said. She stopped and kissed me. Then we crossed over the bridge to her shack. Pauline's shack. Pauline's shack is made entirely of watermelon sugar except the door, that is a good-looking grayish stained pine with a stone doorknob. Even the windows are made of watermelon sugar. A lot of windows here are made of sugar. It's very hard to tell the difference between sugar and glass, the way sugar is used by Carl the window maker. It's just a thing that depends on who is doing it. It's a delicate art, and Carl has it. Pauline lit a lantern. It smelled fragrant, burning with watermelon trout oil. We have a way here also of mixing watermelon and trout to make a lovely oil for our lanterns. We use it for all our lighting purposes. It has a gentle fragrance to it and makes a good light. Pauline's shack is very simple, as all our shacks are simple. Everything was in its proper place. Pauline uses the shack just to get away from iDeath for a few hours, or a night if she feels like it. All of us who stay at iDeath have shacks to visit whenever we feel like it. I spend more time at my shack than anybody else. I usually just sleep one night a week at iDeath. I, of course, take most of my meals there. We who do not have regular names spend a lot of time by ourselves. It suits us. Well, here we are, Pauline said. She looked beautiful in the light of the lantern. Her eyes sparkled. Please, come here, I said. She came over to me, and I kissed her mouth, and then I touched her breasts. They felt so smooth and firm. I put my hand down the front of her dress. That feels good, she said. Let's try some more, I said. That would be good, she said. We went over and lay upon her bed. I took her dress off. She had nothing on underneath. We did that for a while. Then I got up and took off my overalls and lay back down beside her. The tigers again. After making love, we talked about the tigers. It was Pauline who started it. She was lying warmly beside me, and she wanted to talk about the tigers. She said that old Chuck's dream got her thinking about them. I wonder why they could speak our language, she said. No one knows, I said, but they could speak it. Charlie says maybe we were tigers a long time ago and changed, but they didn't. I don't know. It's an interesting idea, though. I never heard their voices, Pauline said. I was just a child, and there were only a few tigers left, old ones, and they barely came out of the hills. They were too old to be dangerous, and they were hunted all the time. I was 6 years old when they killed the last one. I remember the hunters bringing it to iDeath. There were hundreds of people with them. The hunters said they had killed it up in the hills that day, and it was the last tiger. They brought the tiger to iDeath, and everybody came with him. They covered it with wood and soaked the wood down with watermelon trout oil. Gallons and gallons of it. I remember people threw flowers on the pile and stood around crying because it was the last tiger. Charlie took a match and lit the fire. It burned with a great orange glow for hours and hours, and black smoke poured up into the air. It burned until there was nothing left but ashes, and then the men began right then and there building the trout hatchery at iDeath, right over the spot where the tiger had been burned. It's hard to think of that now when you're down there dancing. I guess you remember all this. You were there too. You were standing beside Charlie. That's right, I said. They had beautiful voices. I never heard them, she said. Perhaps that was for the best, I said. Maybe you're right. Tigers, she said, and was soon fast asleep in my arms. Her sleep tried to become my arm and then my body, but I wouldn't let it because I was suddenly very restless. I got up and put on my overalls and went for one of the long walks I take at night.